Welcome. I want to thank the library, this wonderful room. We've had many lectures here before. Big open room, awesome windows, amazing place. I want to thank the Glen Canyon Conservancy. They've hosted many lectures here too. My name is Chris Schroeder. I'm the owner of Airship Books. I'm teaming up with the Conservancy this evening to host this lecture. One of the things that I love about having a bookstore is all the amazing local books about this area. And tonight's guest speaker definitely contributes to that with primarily books about the Grand Canyon, but he's wrote books, and then him and his wife own a publishing company as well, where they host other authors. One of the amazing books I read recently, about 4 months ago, is From Pow to Power. It's the first 100 people through the Grand Canyon, and I did the Grand Canyon trip, and it was really, really amazing to have that book in my mind doing that trip. It really helped out and brought things more to life. So we want to give our attention now to our guest speaker, Tom Marston, and he's going to be talking about a book that he recently published in a lecture, and the title of the lecture is Otis Who? And the book is for sale. It's on Doc Marston, Volume 1. Let's give our attention to Tom Marston.
He comes out. How cool is that? Paige, you have an incredible connection to the Colorado River and Colorado River history, and most of you know that. So when I say Otis Who, you say Marston, not Martin, but Marston, because you know that. If you don't, I'm going to tell you all about it. The first thing I want to do is thank Chris Schroeder. You got a guy in this town who's trying to put the bookstore together. How cool is that? Of course, we are book publishers, so we have a little skin in his game here. We think books are really cool because I've got this 1825 book. And with a little sunshine, it works. I don't have anything electronic that old. So books are good, and we're glad Chris is here. Tonight, Hazel Clark and I, we run Vishnu Temple Press. It's the highest mountain in the Grand Canyon. I don't know what we were thinking. It was a terrible name, but we could have done better. We've got a bunch of books here. This is a fundraiser for Glen Canyon Conservancy in your town. Marston, Otis, who knew this town and the people in it. So what we got is a bunch of books here. Some are discounted, some aren't. But the proceeds from tonight's sale go to the Conservancy. And if you buy a book, you get a book. This book is out of print. And it's about Glen Canyon before the dam. And it's full of incredible photographs. Kern Nuttall is here. Kern, where are you? Cindy Stafford is here. Cindy, where are you? So Cindy did the map, Kern did the book. If you want to read about dead people in the cemetery at Grand Canyon National Park. Now you think, why would I want to know about that? But there are some really cool people there. Otis who? Otis became Doc Marston. And he wrote a book. Chris was saying the first 100 people through the Grand Canyon. And we busted that out of the archive it was in and ran it to press. We got a lot of books here, all kinds of stuff. Craftsman work here. Any Park Service employees here? Show of hands. Okay. There was a law enforcement Park Service guy that said, that's it, I can't do this anymore. And he said, I quit. And the superintendent said, wait, you're a good guy. I like the work you do. If you could do anything in the park, what would you do? And he said, I just want to be a carpenter. And he said, we got an apprentice program. I'm signing you right up. And that's this book. So the Navajo Bridge. Oh, where is that bridge? It's around here somewhere. And Jerry Cannon designed the second bridge and wrote this book, and that book got this award from some Misty Mountain smart people somewhere in New Mexico. I don't know what they were thinking. There's all kinds of other books over here. I really encourage you to. Brand new book just came out on Aravaipa Canyon, which is way down in southern Arizona, and you won't want to be interested in that because we're way up here in northern Arizona. Oh yeah, that's the book on Marston. This book is really good in a mass casualty event. If you happen to be there, you just hold it by your chest, and it'll catch the bullet. But then you can get this. Say buy one get one free. Just saying. This is a fundraiser for Glen Canyon Conservancy. Okay? And Amanda Boston, she's so kind, she said, hey, I'll pay your gas, I'll give you a stipend for coming up here. I'm like, Amanda, are you crazy? This is a fundraiser for you. This isn't a fundraiser for us. Now, you need to understand that I want you to turn your cell phones off. Okay? Because I'm addicted to ringtones. And if I don't have your ringtone, I'm just going to drop this mic, I'm going to walk right over there and say, where'd you get that ringtone? So, I don't like people asking questions. Just let me talk, okay? Don't want questions, all right? But in the end, I'll ask you, so hold your questions to the end. Now, if you find yourself laughing out loud, then I'm doing my job. Because I'm going to keep you here till you're really bored. I got about a 6-hour presentation. I'm going to try to bring it down to an hour. Okay, now I'm going to start here. Now, you need to understand, when you write a mass casualty book, you need a lot of help. And so I want to shout out Lisa Rydell and Cindy Stafford in the Glen Canyon Museum collection, because I went to a lot of collections all around the world. Well, all around the United States, from East Coast to West Coast, North and South, to put this book together, because Marston was a pretty amazing person. Do you see the dot on the I in Basin? That's about where we are. We're about in the middle of the Colorado Basin, and due west of us, where the sun just set, is Los Angeles, and that's where Marston's collection is. And northwest of there, up at Berkeley, is where Marston lived most of his life. I can't tell you about Otis who until I tell you about Otis's dad and mom. You're like, oh, how long is this going to take? Or what's going on here? Marston's dad was an orphan at 9. And he escaped out of Boston Harbor to the sea when he was 17. And by the time he was 25, you work out the math, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, he is now the captain of his own semi-truck, which back then happened to have, its own crew and its own cook and a bunch of sails, and he was really good at this. And he ran around the world moving cargo, and he ran sugar from Hawaii into California, and he ran oak to Oakland down the West Coast. And then he met this gal, and I don't know, things always change when that happens. But Idella Alice Reed, she was born in 1863. She was with her dad and mom in Hawaii and got on a boat and met the captain. And I don't know, they both fell off the boat. They got married and they started sailing the world. And they had kids and they kept sailing. And it's absolutely a crazy story. Eventually the captain's like, I'm getting too old for this. And he moved to Berkeley with his bride and their kids. And they moved into a place the captain called the Anchorage. And I learned that there was a big compass on the front porch and all this junk from the sailing days. And the captain had a wicked sense of humor. And they had some kids. They had 5 kids. 2 girls and then a boy and then 2 more girls. And Otis is in the middle here. There's a cute little kid when he's 7. Now, the trouble is when Otis is 11, his dad is 70. And his dad's parenting skills were like, sailor, get up that mast and get that sail up there now. Yes, sir. So the kid's relationship was kind of odd. And the son, I would say, was kind of odd, but he was brilliant. Because mom was into the parent-teacher association. She was brilliant. And she wanted her kids to be really smart. And they were. Marston loved Otis. Otis who loved to swim 880 yards. I can hardly walk 880 yards. He's out there swimming. He and his high school team swam the Golden Gate Isthmus. The bridge wasn't there. They failed the first attempt, and he almost drowned. But never mind. He got it figured out. And he also got skiing figured out. Of course, when they started this in 1916, they hadn't figured out poles. So just kind of hang on and off you go. And then he walked back up again. and that was good. He got into sculling at Cornell in 1917 on his second bachelor's degree in industrial engineering after his first bachelor's degree in electrical engineering in 1916 out of Berkeley. And then, of course, it's World War II. Wait, it's not World War II, it's World War I. Yeah, sorry, I'll do that, and you can correct me. All right, so he gets to Annapolis, and he's really smart, and they're like, we want to send you to submarine school. And he's like, great! And they're like, you know, everybody else is screaming. You want to do this? He's like, yeah, sign me up. And he just really excelled in that. They sent him out to San Pedro, out in California by San Diego, to the naval base out there. And on the way, on the train, he and a couple buds stopped at a little town called Williams. Then they got on a spur line and went north to a little place called the South Rim. And they got on mules, and they went down to the bottom of a place called the Grand Canyon. And there's a rapid down there called Hermit. And according to one of his sailing buds, Otis, who looked at that rapid and said, I can swim that.
Oh my God.
And he would about 20 or 30 years later. He was a submarine commander in the H-7. And his dad, the man of sail, thought, my son, you are crazy. That's just insane to be underwater like that. But his dad was underwater because the captain didn't understand business. And he had these terrible, terrible business enterprises going. And so his son quit the Navy and helped his dad with like 16 lawyers and 16 lawsuits to recover the dad's affairs. And then, he met somebody. His dad did. Margaret Garthwaite, an incredible woman in her own right. They got married, they had settled down, they had kids. Twin girls in the 1920s is really kind of rare. But there they were, and they were the big talk of the town. They had a son before the girls, his name was Garth, and the girls were Lowell and Meridell, and they were cute little kids. And Marston, he got into film, he got into 16 millimeter film, and I'll show you some of that tonight. He got into a lot of photography, and he was a boring guy, I'm just saying, but he liked drama, and he liked theater, and he went to a place called the Bohemian Club in downtown San Francisco that was doing that kind of stuff. Every summer in their property north of town called the Grove, they would have these incredible performances, and the entire San Francisco would go over to check this out. And the members of the Bohemian Club were really wealthy, so all the women were out there checking out all the men, and I don't know what happened there. I don't know, it just went on and on. But Marston loved this stuff. And he was all just dressed up and in these plays and stuff, and he got a job working for E.F. Hutton and ran the San Francisco investing firm. And oh gosh, after a couple of years, he discovered that his boss was having an affair with his boss's secretary, and he told his boss's boss, and when his boss found out that he told his boss's boss, the boss fired Marston and quit. And all of the clients at E.F. Hutton said, hey, you're doing a good job for us. Where are you going? Where you live? Can we come to you direct? And they did, and he managed those people until they died or he died. And why am I telling you all this? You're like, what do we care? You know the river bug is going to bite. You just don't know how. So he's in the Bohemian Club. There's a guy named Neil Wilson, and they're buds. Neil has a son named Bruce. Otis has a son named Garth. They go out skiing together without poles, right? And Neil says, I'm going on a river trip in southern Utah with a guy named Norm Nevels. And Otis, who says, I want to go too. Just like the youngest kid, right? And Neil says, no, the trip's booked, but I'll tell you all about it when I come back. Now, Neil Wilson is an advertising guy. And on that river trip, Norm Nevels is complaining because he can't book his trips. People are not coming on his trips. Wilson says, look, I tell you what, if you give me a 50% discount for your Grand Canyon run, see to Wilson, he's a smart guy. I'll bring my kid, and I'll bring my neighbor who's got a kid, and we will take kids on the river. And that's exactly what they did in 1942. Now there's some historic film of that river trip in Grand Canyon, so let's see if we can make it work. Ooh. I told you that Marston was good with the camera, right? Yeah. This is Badger Rapid. What I find fascinating about these films is you can look at the rapid to see, has the rapid changed? You know, Badger's got this big rock, kind of center right. And there it is, the big rock, center right, with a little tongue just to the left of it. This is 1942. Today is 2026. If I work out the math, I got 60, 70, 80. Oh, look at the log. There was driftwood down there. There's 4 guys sitting on this log. Maybe the guy who floated through on the log raft, what was his name? White something? Maybe that guy actually did that. Look at that log. Yeah, but the log's in the eddy going round and round. It's not going downstream very fast. So maybe Mr. White actually didn't make the run. So they had some adventure. This is Ed Hudson, and he's swearing off of oarboats right there. When they flipped in Lava Chuar Rapid. Lava Chuar? Really? They flipped in Lava Chuar? They did. And up on the rim, there's a guy from the Associated Press with binocs going, oh my gosh, I think they flipped a boat. And so when they get to Phantom Ranch, the press calls, and they get on the phone, and the press says, I saw you flip a boat. Oh no, we didn't flip a boat. No, everything's just fine. We didn't, no, I don't know what you were looking at. It wasn't us. Must have been another trip. Yeah, right. Absolutely fascinating. The history of what was going on. So there are the 2 kids. Do they look like crying? Oh my gosh, they had so much fun. And the dads were like, Neville's, we're going to go to work for you. And that's exactly what Marston did. On this river trip, though, he picked up a nickname. He said, you look like an old-time pill roller, Marston. Otis who? We're going to call you Doc. Now that got him in trouble a couple of years later when they were at this little ranch somewhere on the salmon, and this guy got Marston aside and said, you know, I got a little problem with my prostate. And Marston, being the quick thinker, said, oh, I'm a doctor of divinity. And he knew right there he was on a slippery slope that he had to take care of. So he said, all right, I'm gonna be the doc at the end of the trip that you tie the boat up to. He got out of that one. But he went to work for Norm with his film. And right away, Norm Neville's out in Mexican Hat, Utah, saw a benefit. People show up and say, I saw this film at the Rotary Club there in California, and we're out here to go run a river running. And that's what they did, and it worked really well. But Marston wanted to get back on the river, and he knew that it was kid-friendly. So in World War II, I get my wars right now. This is 1942. There is Doc with his twin daughters, a school friend of theirs, and there's Joni Neville's with her dad. Then they're boating, and they went down to San Juan, went all the way to Lee's Ferry, had a great time. Well, guess what? Marston said, that was good, I want more. You know, these river people, they get river rabies, right? All they're doing is running river after river after river. This is crazy. This is through Cataract Canyon. They started in Moab. World War II isn't over yet. They go all the way to Glen Canyon, down through Cataract. There's 4 women and 4 men. Marston is there with his wife, his twin daughters, and there was supposed to be another guy on the trip, but he backed out. He sent his daughter instead. The woman on the far left, she is still alive in San Francisco. She's an incredible woman. She didn't know anybody on the trip. She didn't know how to swim. And she was flirting with the guys, and she was loving it. And she said, the rest of my life, she's in her 90s now, she said, that trip, when times were tough, it was an inkwell I would dip in my pen and carry on. Oh my gosh, how cool is that? Hell's Canyon, up on the Snake, and then the Salmon River, 1946, back-to-back trips. Marston and a whole bunch of people, his twin daughters are there, his wife is there. These people were boating fools. They were just everywhere. 1947, starting in Green River, Wyoming, down through Ashley Falls, down through Flaming Gorge, and then ran Grand Canyon after that. There's a ton of boating going on here in the mid-40s, and Marston's pushing that train. Okay, on that trip in 47, Marston's like, he's talking to Norm, and Norm's history is kind of all over the place. And he's like, I got to write this down. I'm going to put together a little pamphlet. I've been fired now from Hutton. I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to write a little pamphlet on the history of Grand Canyon river running. Sounded super easy. So he said, you know what? He asked Mag, he said, his wife, he said, hey, Mag, let's take a road trip. And she said, good, let's do that. I'll travel. And they went to Emery Cove, and they spent a couple days with Emery. And then they went to Salt Lake City, and they visited with Bert Loper. And they visited with Harry Ailson, and Marston went, oh no. Because now he had 4 authorities with 4 different stories. It's like, okay, in here somewhere has got to be a better deal. And then he was hooked on the history. 1948, this is the last time that Norm and Doc are going to boat together. And Norm has a tendency to go through boatmen, and Doc stuck with him because he could row a boat, he could bring his family. This was a cool deal for him. He just loved it. But 1948 was where Marston splits away from Norm. And Marston, remember Ed Hudson, the guy swearing off ore boats? He went back to California, got a naval architect, drew up plans for a motorboat. He was going to uprun the Grand Canyon in 1948 with a 4-cylinder. Flathead 4. Yeah, good idea with that. But they tried it, and they failed, and there they are. Must be doing something wrong here. Marston and Hudson trying in 48 to outrun the Grand Canyon. They got past Diamond Creek, which was pretty good. And then Hudson swapped out the motor Flathead 4 to a Flathead 6. The same year, 1948, Marston and some other buds run the Dolores, the first documented. And I bet it was run before then, but I don't know. We haven't figured it out yet. And by 1949, the booklet has turned into a book. Doc is starting to interview a gazillion people, and he is starting to comb libraries because he wants to know what the Spaniards did. He wants to know what the indigenous people did. Who else was on the river before today? So he needed to go to the Huntington Library. He needed 2 readers to approve him coming in. Francis Farquhar, you probably don't know, but you may know Ian Campbell, who had run Grand Canyon in 1923. Those were his boosters to get him into the Huntington. Now, Huntington's a pretty fascinating place back in the late 1940s. This is their reading room, and these are PhD people doing research. That's what the Huntington does. And here comes this guy. He's kind of a pudgy financial planner, a short little bald guy, and he's interested in the Spanish on the Colorado River. And the head librarian is like, what are you doing here? Who are you? And they become fast friends. Marston was good at making friends. And so the head librarian, his name was Leslie Bliss. And I just think for Marston, this was bliss at the Huntington. I mean, these people really saved his butt. So Marston is in Berkeley. Berkeley is known for a couple things: fires that burn the town to the ground and earthquakes. And Marston's starting to get first in journals from historic river runners, and he's scared. You're going to lose that stuff. And Bliss, being the smart guy, says, we have a copy machine, sir, and we will copy whatever you want if we can keep the copy. And Marston says, sign me up. Their copy machine is called a photostat machine. It's bigger than this thing. It's a giant, like Volkswagen-sized big box, which takes photographs. And that's what they were doing. And so they started cranking. It was the women of the Huntington that taught Marston library science. They said, dude, this is what you need to do and how you need to do it. You got these categories. I want you to have an alphabetical section. We want you to have a chronological section. We want you to have a geographical section. And he's like, wow, you guys are going to be making a lot of photostats. And they said, yes, sir, we are. And when the first copy machine came out by Kodak, cost in today's dollars about $1,500. Marston asked the ladies of the Huntington, and they said, buy one right now. Because we're shutting down our photostat machine, we're going to copy machines. And so he did that. And when these little critters showed up, had somebody at the house, he saw the critter drop on the carpet and run away. They wrote the ladies of the Huntington and said, you need to get this chemical, you'll be fine. And he never saw them in the house again. Within a week of his death, his entire collection, which was now like 430 banker's boxes and a whole bunch of other junk, got scooped up and went right to the Huntington. They were waiting. They were like, ready? Is he dead yet? Is he dead yet? Because in the late 40s, he put them in his will, and they wrote the language to put that collection in their shop. Okay, so the first green box 1 broke down and was put into box 1, A, B, and C, and along with 13 other boxes and 33 other boxes and 432 other boxes. This is the Marston collection. I'm like, what's in there? Oh, yeah, this was not a good idea. But we figured we better figure it out. This is all the junk that's in there. I'm estimating there's 250,000 pieces of paper in this collection. The guy could type as fast as I could talk. He just blazed out letter after letter after letter on the typing. Oh, my typewriter, amazing. 5 additional collections. They're all to Huntington, except the 6 boats that Marston curated that are at Grand Canyon National Park. All right, what is in there? These green boxes and blue folders went to Marston. His handwriting is all over them. And there were carloads of these. He would write to Huntington saying, I need more boxes and folders. And as soon as he got the carload saying, I need more boxes and folders, his house was filling up with these things. What's in there? This is a letter between Norm Nevels and Otis Marston. The cool thing about the correspondence that's in there is Marston kept a copy of his letter in reply. Now, as a biographer, as an idiot biographer, how do you do? My name is Tom Martin. I was stunned because I know what he was thinking when he replied, because the letter is there, back and forth. What kind of correspondence? Past and contemporary river runners, their family members, to get their letters, diaries, and pictures. Well, like with who? You know that signature down there? Walt Disney. Nevels sent Marston with Marston's film to go see Disney. And that's how 10 Who Dared was finally filmed in 1959. And I was like telling the Huntington people, this is an original Walt Disney signature in here. Do you understand that? And they're like, okay, we're going to put a copy in there and display something. Thank you very much. Well, who else is in there? So Marston was a Republican. He wasn't a John Bircher, okay? But he loved Herbert Hoover. I'm just saying. And Herbert Hoover was a Bohemian. Yeah, and an engineer. So was Marston. So he had such a good time. He got him to talk at Rotary clubs and whatnot. But this is just a tip of the iceberg. Walt Disney, Superintendent Harold Bryant, Bus Hatch, Riverette Bus, Frank Dodge down there, David Rust, remember 1920s in Glen Canyon, good friend Johnny Maxon on the 1923, on the Caltech trip. I digress. August Tadgey. There's Mildred Baker, 1940, with Barry Goldwater, Emery Kolb, of course, Edith Kolb, of course. It goes on and on. Elzada Clover, Lois Jotter. This is the tip of the iceberg. Marston went after thousands of people, and his correspondence is all there, trying to sort out the river record. And then there were the binders, these 3-ring binders. So I'm sorry, I'm really stupid. I'm going through probably 3 or 4 reams of paper in each one of these boxes, and I sit there all day long like a human copy machine. And when I can't take it anymore, I call up a binder. The binders are so cool. What Marston did was he'd take a photograph and his copy machine, and it would copy a map, and he would stick the photograph on it, and then he would type on the map with his typewriter really fast what the picture was all about. So here's an example. There's a map. That's the Navajo Bridge. And there's a boat. What's the boat? If you put that boat in Photoshop, it looks like this. That's the Millard. On the back of the photo, what it says is outboard motorboat Millard en route to Lee's Ferry. Copy of a print owned by H.A. Samsky of Phoenix. Caption on the back of the print says, taken 5 miles from Marble on Lee's Ferry Road, October 28, 1933. Neil Johnson stands by the boat. It was used to transport from Lee's Ferry to the Placer operations, that's gold, in Gretchen Bar in Glen Canyon. There's a couple hundred of these. And it's a lot of fun. The other thing that I discovered in this was the permit system. You know, river runners got to get permits to go boating. That started with Minor Tillotson in the 1920s. I hadn't a clue. And yet there was the correspondence, Marston with the Park Service, talking about all this stuff in the 40s and 50s. Norm Neville's got the first permit to run a boat through Grand Canyon in 1948. Ed Hudson got the second permit that year. The third permit the next year, went to Neville's, and then the fourth went to Ed Hudson again, and the fifth went to Don Harris, and it went from there. I found it fascinating that the big dam fight over Echo Park, it wasn't a partisan thing. There were church groups and garden clubs and Democrats and Republicans saying, don't build that dam. And there were church groups and garden clubs and Democrats and Republicans saying, build that dam. And it was just absolutely amazing to see how that all worked out. And that all that correspondence is in that collection in there. This is the coolest thing. All these interview notes with river people. So Marston would visit with Bert Loper, and he'd be scribbling down. Bert says he saw 3 doctors, and he's going to die of a heart attack, says every doctor, if he goes on that river trip. We wouldn't know that if Marston hadn't scribbled down that note. Look at this. How cool is that? Material on docks, river runs, that's all in there. Information on Colorado River geographical areas. And the craziest, coolest thing is notes on numerous horsepacking trips. Wait a minute, I thought Marston was a boater. Now you're changing the subject. Horsepacking trips into Glen Canyon with interviews of indigenous peoples about Glen Canyon. Really? Really? I introduced to you, this is Buck Whitehat, this is Bahi Ketchum, and Sid Whiskers, and these guys took Marston all through Glen Canyon. I'm talking about the rough country over there with a chin thrust. That's what it was. Year after year after year. Christy Turner got in on this. Lex Lindsay got in on this. These archaeologists from MNA. Frank Maslin, the billionaire, he was in on this. And the Paiutes and the Navajos showed them where to go. Yeah, just absolutely lovely. Oh yeah, I don't want to forget all the Colorado steamboats. You're like, oh my God, really? This too? Yeah, that's the Explorer. That's Joseph Ives' steamship from 1850 something or whatever, trying to uprun the lower Colorado. Before it all got, they found it, they dug it all out, and then they tore it all up for scrap metal. But that's in the Marston. So, oh yeah, these journals. Master Mariner George Flavel's original journal. This is a Seymour Sylvester Dubendorf, the rapid in Grand Canyon, named after him. That's his journal. There's just the coolest stuff in here. And don't forget the women, the information on the women of the river. So these 4 women here, that's Rosalind Johnson on your left. Standing next to her, Sue Seeley. Standing next to Sue is Marston's daughter, Meridell. And then there's Mary Abbott. You know the plaque, the big Norm Neville's cenotaph plaque that's at the visitor center by the bridge? Mary Abbott made that working with Marston and Maslin on the language. People say, oh, Norm Neville's and Doc Marston. Marston hated Neville's. I'm sorry, Marston worked it on his cenotaph with Mary. These women, 4 of them, have at least 1,000 miles of river running under their belts in 1952. So what did Marston think about the ladies of the river? Doc found the historic writings of women river runners stood up, quote, up on average better than the men, and there's nothing wrong with the women having opinions. The men of the river would be wise to listen. There's not just papers in here, but there's bits and pieces of odd stuff. This is a little plaque that's come off of one of Julia Stone's boats that went through Grand Canyon in 1909. Raymond Cogswell sent that to him. Cogswell was the photographer that Julia Stone hired. Cogswell and Stone, you know, people on river trips get to fighting with one another. Oh my God. Stone's like, we lost the fire pan today. I wish we'd lost Cogswell instead. But Cogswell came out of that trip with a couple thousand photographs, the first good documentation from Green River, Wyoming, all the way down to Needles. Thanks to Stone, who paid Cogswell, and all those photos are fascinating. So Cogswell, like Marston, sent him this. Marston, of course, having been in the Navy, had these wonderful flags that he flew on the back of his boats, motorboats in the days in the 1950s. So you'll find these flags, and that's pretty crazy. And then there's a duck. Everybody needs a duck. Yeah. All right, so I'm in the Huntington, right? I'm in the Huntington, holy cow. And there's a duck in here. And this says, to Otis Marston, a degree of river travel and study. A multi-fulmer. And this is 1951, I don't know. So they were having a hilarious time. Guess what? There's a head gasket in here. I'm going through gas receipts from 1959 from 10 Who Dared Filming, right? And it's a big heavy envelope, and I look, what the heck is this? I look in there, I got a head gasket. Ran up and told the guy at the desk, I said, check this out. There's a head gasket in here. And he's like, what's a head gasket? The films. This is the oldest film I've found so far. That big rock up there with the eyebrow, that big rock, this is a Badger. This is Badger Rapid. Look at all the driftwood. That's crazy Charlie Russell trying to make a film. The guy was really bat crazy. What's he doing? What the heck? What is that? Oh, there's our hero. Look how good he looks. Yeah. That's the Ross Wheeler. And that's ice. And there's crazy Charlie Russell going after the ice with an axe, trying to get the boats out of the ice. And that's ice in the eddy at the bottom of the rapid. Who knew that the Colorado River in Grand Canyon was running ice back in the day? Welcome to the Marston collection. The things you learn in there, oh, the photos. Oh my gosh, 40,000 photos. Do you see the little guy right there? Do you see all that sand? That's Deer Creek Falls. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm in there, I'm just like, ah. And they're like, I think that guy's gonna have a heart attack over there. Just go give him some water. I'm like, I can't believe this. The Pathé Bray film crew of 1927, about ready to hike out at Hermit. They went on strike at Phantom. There's a whole, Brad Dimmick needs to grab these guys and do that story. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely amazing. So, for those of you historians that are interested in how do I interface with this, there is an online finding aid that if you print it out, is 250 pages long. It's pretty good. That's just helpful. Okay, so I brought you up to 1949 when we diverted off into the realms of the Huntington, but Marston didn't stop boating in 49, so let's take that up to 1979 when he thankfully dies and you people can go home. Okay, Glen and Bessie Hyde ran a sweep scow through the Grand Canyon in the 1920s, and Marston's like, what is a sweep scow? So this guy named Don Smith is running these scows up in the salmon. So in 1949, in a very cold trip, Marston gets on one of these things and goes down the Salmon River. And he said, you know what, if they hadn't died in downstream west end of Grand Canyon, there would have been a sweep scow period in Grand Canyon. Yeah, he found those boats amazing. 1949, remember Ed Hudson? Remember the guy who's trying to uprun? Well, he's trying to uprun again with a bigger engine in 49, and that doesn't work either. But what they do is they downrun through Grand Canyon first, dropping off cans of gasoline, because if you're going to uprun, you need gas, right? So that's what they did. That was a 22nd trip to the Grand Canyon. The next year, Marston is back. Hudson is really mad because Marston wants to bring his own motorboat, a Chris Craft 19-foot runabout. Oh my God, a Chris Craft? Yeah. All that mahogany, oh my God. Hudson says, no, only my boat's a special boat. It's the only one can make the Grand Canyon. Marston says, yeah, but my boat is named Hudson. Can't I bring it? And Ed goes, all right, bring your boat. The next year, Marston is back with his Chris Craft, but are there any Sandersons in this room? I see the t-shirt. Sanderson, show a hand. Marston knew the Sandersons. He knew this town of Page because of Rod and Lois Sanderson, who were living here when the dam was built, okay? And Rod Sanderson and Jimmy Jordan attempted to take outboards through Grand Canyon in 1951. And poor Rod, with like smoke coming out of his ears when that motorboat quit. in the western Grand Canyon. And Jimmy Jordan went right on by. Blah, and Jimmy gets first out. And Rod was mad. But by that time, they're all good friends anyway. It was the first outboard motorboat to go through Grand Canyon. Doc said, I'm getting rid of my Chris Craft. He sold it very quickly and went to these motorboats. This is a Disney scouting film. Marston really worked Walt Disney for a lot of money. Oh my God. I'm like, really? Yeah, really. But eventually, Marston has 3 boats with no engines. There's a crazy story about he'd beg for engines from Evan Roode. And first they sent them and then they wouldn't. Oh my God. 1955, low water. They canceled that trip, didn't go. All right, you Sanderson people, who is that?
Grandfather.
What's his name?
Rod.
Thank you, Raleigh Sanderson. What's he doing on that boat?
Trying to flip it back over.
Yeah, he's laughing his head off. Yeah, Joe Deloge is thinking that Rod's driving the boat, and Rod's thinking that Joe's driving the boat, and the Rapid decided something else. They had, and of course, all the tools fell out of the boat, and anyway, they're having a lot of fun. 1957 was the highest water that's ever been run. We have documentation for in Grand Canyon. It has 130,000. I actually had to dig into the USGS records to find that peak on that day and what the stage gauge said to get that number. There's a little film of that, so we'll just watch a little bit of film. That's Marston in the back. What are they doing? They're walking across the Perea Ford. The river has backed up into the ford. That's the Ross Wheeler. Almost the water's there. Marston's here in his twin outboard here. He's going to sell these boats to Rod. And you can see the skunk flags flying. This is Tapeats Creek. The river has crested and is just dropping, and the sandy beaches are starting to pop out. I'm like, really? Oh my gosh. That's the river, and there's Deer Creek Falls. The water's going right into the river. So the next time you're there, if you're there, and you look around and go, the river's right here. There's a boat with nobody in it. That's Lava Falls. You know, Pat Riley said, Marston, you're always ahead of everybody. You're trying to get the boats to figure out how to run the rapids by themselves. It's a really good idea. Keep practicing. Yeah. This is Lake Mead, and the driftwood in 57 was phenomenal. And there's one short little clip here you got to pay attention of pushing the drift out of the way of the boat. So that's, yeah. There's Mary Abbott. She's back on the river with Doc in 58. 1959, filming The 10 Who Dared. This is kind of funny because what's going to happen is Marston's going to sell his boats to Rod and Rod's kids because they got into boating and they loved it, and that's fine. But the checks weren't coming from Sanderson for the boats. I'm just saying, it's in the book. I'm looking for letters here. Okay, fine. And Doc's like, how am I going to get paid for this? So he says, look, Raleigh, there's going to be this 1959 trip. Can you buy the gas and get the gas truck down there, and I'll reimburse you? And Sanderson says, sure, I'll do that. And Doc never reimbursed him. And that was the payment for the boats. Now, Doc has no boats. But the jet boats show up. And they have boats and they need somebody to help them. And Jim Rigg writes these New Zealand people and saying, I'll help you. I'll lead your trip through Grand Canyon. And so does Doc. And they flip a coin. I don't know how they do Marston, but they did. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to show you a little film. I'm going to run over with my microphone so you can hear the actual sound. That's Georgie on the film.
Meanwhile, Georgie is shown the controls of the jet boat by John. She and her party will follow quietly a day later aboard her great air-filled rubber mattresses. Fuel is put ashore for use on the uprun. Some temperatures are high enough in the canyon to boil petrol, or rather gasoline as our hosts call it. Marston gives it a go all the same in Big Red.
And he shatters his tibia right there.
boat looks to be out of control. Upstream we have no... By great good luck, contact has been made with Luke Air Force Base. Down 5,000 feet into the canyon after a desert flight of 150 miles.
Okay, volume 1 of Marston goes all through this in the last chapter of this 1960 jet boat run. This is John Hamilton. John's in the Wee Red, and he's been working for hours trying to figure out how to uprun this rapid, and he's finally got it, and he's on the line. He knows how to do it. And this guy is the best jet boat pilot in the world at the time, 1960. And he's done it. Now, here's where things get crazy. He's going to throw a rooster tail, right? You know the jet boat people, right? They throw rooster tails, right? But right here, the reverse gates close. And he's on full throttle. And he's like, what the heck is going on here? What is the matter with this boat? I can't believe this. I got all the way up here and I can't go up the easy flat water. Then they figured out what was going on. They wired all the reverse gates open in every boat. That Jim Bechtel, he lost all his film when the Wee Yellow went down in Grapevine. Fireball Young was driving the Wee Yellow and just crashed it.
The last stretch of river was room for the boats to play tag. But we are down to 3 boats and 7 men. Wee Yellow sank in a few seconds in big water in the Black Granite Gorge, and her crew left us by the trail of Bright Angel. To unwind. But Doc was not entirely right. It will take more than a lifetime to unwind. The jet boats born in New Zealand have proved themselves. And under the willow in the Colorado desert, our friend Doc has a celebration ready.
The champagne was very warm because the ice had all melted hours before. But Buzzy Belknap is still alive, and I call him every couple months just to say hello. And so just think about this. This is kind of just crazy stuff they were doing. 1963, low water trip. The dam now has taken control of the river, and the reservoir is starting to fill. And Marston's down there with sport yaks. They had tiny little boats there. And it took them weeks and weeks and weeks to get through Grand Canyon. What they did in 1964, Marston is up in Cataract Canyon looking for a historical inscription he finds before the lake moves back up and buries that inscription of, just amazing stuff. But Marston's still back here, and he's thinking crazy stuff. This is 1969 with Jim Bob Rowlands in this fast boat. And Marston is saying, look, the public wants to get through Grand Canyon in about 2 days, maybe 2 nights. So they're doing these incredibly fast trips, and everybody else hates them because by noon they're pulling into camp. And all the other river trips come along to camp there, and Marston's there. This didn't last very long. In 1972, the park deep sixed all that. But Doc kept boating. That's O.C. Dale on the left there, and Doc, and he was the historian for Grand Canyon expeditions. Just amazing. And the dams, think about his span, 42 to 79, okay? Flaming Gorge, all the Hells Canyon dams, Navajo Dam, the dam at this town, there they were. The river Styx. Marston was not real happy with dams. I'm just saying. I'm not saying what I'm thinking. I'm just saying what Marston was thinking. He said that green water that comes out the bottom of the dams was like spoiled meat. And what I learned is he's saying that because he ran the rivers before the dam. I see Lake Powell. I'm like, wow, this is really beautiful. They saw it 100%. Yeah, that's just what it is. Then his wife died of cancer. She smoked like a chimney. His mom died. Marston's all alone in the big house. He moves into the Bohemian Club with his giant collection and carries on. And there were a bunch of people pissed at him. There was the Mad Club, the Mad at Doc Club. Because he was finding all this dirt. And people would say, oh, this happened. And he'd say, the letters from Cogswell say it was different. So that's what it was. And Sanderson's, thank you very much. You see these pennants are over at your shop. So these are he embraced the skunk. There were thousands of stuffed skunks in his house. People would send him gifts. Absolutely crazy. So people ask me, well, wait a minute, Marston hated Neville's. Okay, these two guys, you have to realize, they were the top Western river runners for a number of years together. So I was looking for the letters, letter after letter after letter. What the heck was going on? And Doc was very clear. When somebody wrote Doc and said, Neville's is such a rascal, he's just the... Norm would write back saying, no, Neville's had some really good points, and here they are. And when somebody wrote Doc and said, Neville's was a river god, Doc would say, no, he was just a normal guy. He did some good things, he did some bad things, just like the rest of us. I hadn't a clue. So what did I learn about this guy? I'm going to sum it up in like 30 seconds. Marston loved acting. He understood legend and art and what artists could do with history. He also knew that history was oftentimes written by the victors, and he didn't like that. He liked the facts. And he was a skunk, and he dug and dug and dug. And that's what I learned about Marston. Otis who? So in 1979, he's living at the Bohemian Club. It's cold in San Francisco. It's foggy. It's miserable. And some of his Bohemian brothers say, hey, Charlie here's got a house down in Carmel by the sea. The sun's actually shining down there. Let's go down there. So they go down there for a weekend. Now, Marston's in his 80s now, and he can hardly see in the daytime. He can't see at night. And he's old man like me. He's got to pee like every 2 hours, right? So he gets up, he's got to pee. So he opens up the door to the bathroom. He steps in, and he goes right down a concrete flight of stairs. Boom, 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 boom. And 2 days later, he dies in a San Francisco hospital. And actually, there were a couple of obits, one in the San Francisco paper and one in the Salt Lake Trib about that. People wonder, what happened to Doc? Well, those obits were there, and that's what they did. His ashes, what happened to Doc? Earl Leesburg, anybody know Earl? Know of Earl? Yeah, that's Earl. And Bill Belknap, Bill's of course dead, but his son Buzzy's alive. They dropped Doc out of Earl's little plane into what rapid?
Hermit.
Lava Falls.
Lava.
Marston called it Vulcan Rapid. Hey, Chris Schroeder, where are you? Right there. Thank you so much for having me come out tonight and talk to all these poor people. They're probably so glad I'm done. But you know what? This is a fundraiser for the Glen Canyon Conservancy, right? And there's a bunch of books on this table here. So after we're done with questions, come over and buy some books and support the Conservancy, okay? Questions? Any questions? Sir?
What did they typically eat on their river trips?
What did they typically eat on the river trips? It depended who was the trip leader. Marston's trips, everybody complained about the food. Now, Doc figured that out, and he brought a lot of really good food, and people were very happy for that. A quick food story. So the jet boat trip, right? Doc has a Bohemian friend who really wants to go on that trip. So he says, okay, you can come along. You're responsible for the food. So the guy whips around and goes to the Bohemian Club cook and says, put together a bunch of meals for this trip. And so the guy does. He puts them all in these little boxes, and they take them up to Lee's Ferry, and they put them in a jet boat, this big cathedral hall thing. And the first rabbit and badger, you see these cathedral halls are doing this kind of stuff, and they say, oh, it's lunchtime, let's get some food. And they open up the hatch, and all those boxes are a big mess on the floor. So it depended on the trip. They had normal canned goods. They had bread. They had meat for the first couple days. They would resupply. Marston started resupplying with Chet Bundy at Chet's gas station at a place called Whitmore Wash, bringing in fresh food. The food was good. Yeah. Any other questions? No questions? Yes.
The twin daughters, what would they tell you about the river life that they got to experience?
Was really fascinating. They became alcoholics quickly. And when I talked to them, they were really proud of being 50 years sober. They were estranged from their father. Okay? A very patriarchal man who had a good relationship with his son. And his relationship with his daughters really failed when their marriages failed. And this was Berkeley, and they got into drugs, and he didn't like hippies, right? I mean, he was, he's a World War I submarine commander. And they very kindly spent some time with me before they passed away. And I cherish that time.
There's a film, you've probably seen it. It's called Danger River. I think that's what they would call it. So I know Doc was in that film, and you were talking about the kids going on the river with Neville's. So it's like to show how the Grand Canyon's safe. But then you have that film, I don't know how many years later, and they're saying the Colorado River through Grand Canyon is a danger river. So I wonder what Doc thought about that, because he's in that film a little bit. I don't know the exact name, or I think it was Paramount. Or
He laughed.
Okay.
He knew the river was safe.
Yeah.
And what Doc said, and what he tried to tell the Park Service. So your question is, look, the Grand Canyon's the killer. Clyde Eddy, he wrote that book, Danger River. I mean, he just raked the river. Pal Dellenbaugh, Freddie Dellenbaugh, the river's gonna kill you, right? I'm like, oh my God, really? That's a dangerous place. Marston just laughed. He was down there with his kids. He knew the river was a really fun place. If you had one thing. Life jacket. And Marston was trying to tell the Park Service that. The Park Service says, oh, you got to have experience, you got to have a permit, you got to do this, you got to do that. And we're going to put up a permit system that says if you haven't run the river, you won't get a permit. And that was in the 1940s. And Marston's like, get rid of that stupid permit system. Just make sure everybody has a life jacket. Yeah, so the Danger River myth was, just that, according to Marston. Questions, comments, suggestions?
I got one more. This
Yes.
one's kind of a joke, though. What did you think of Kincaid?
What do you think of what?
Arizona Gazette, Kincaid.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think about that?
There is one folder, and it's got the article, and I think, oh, what's Doc going to say about it? And I think it was just like one word he wrote, hoax, or, I mean, it's just, nothing.
Yeah.
But what I found fascinating about that article, again, from a newspaper that was just trying to sell papers, was how much they discredited the indigenous peoples who were in Grand Canyon for thousands of years. And their presence is everywhere. Oh, let's diss them. Let's bring in the Egyptians with their pyramid and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, how cruel. Yeah. Question?
The old picture with the three Navajos, white hat,
Yes.
and Jew guy.
Yes.
Do you know what year that was taken or where?
I can look it up in a book right here. And we've got the journals for this. If you want this information, I can happy to give you a thumb drive with a ton of information on this.
I got this picture of Bahi Ketchum
Wait,
as a code talker.
excuse me. Excuse me. Don't mind me.
Get his contact.
These people
Went out.
Do what?
come with me, make it work. Show these people down here.
Okay.
This is so important.
The three Navajos on horseback. The one in the middle is Bahi Ketchum. And his family is from the Navajo Mountain area. The dad was from the northern end, and the mom was from the Navajo Canyon area. And his son, after coming back from school, started talking to his dad, who was much older than him. He had a lot of kids, and he was one of the younger ones. So he started talking about the trails around Navajo Mountain and the canyons and stuff like that. And he started rediscovering all of those. And I was lucky enough to go on several of the backpacking trips.
So Glen Canyon National Recreation Area's museum collection has some film from those trips. And Bonnie and White Hat, those guys are out there with picks, and they're chiseling into the sandstone so that the horses can get purchased, and they're tracking the old trails. And they're trying year after year, and they finally get to the San Juan. They know there's a trail down there to get to the San Juan. And Bonnie and White Hat, they think it's there, they're not sure either. And they find it, and it's so cool. So, thank you.